and welcome to the Off the Dome Sports Podcast, your favorite sports podcast where two, but sometimes three, sports lovers sit and give their hot takes
Off the dome.
I am Redfish.
Lionel Frankenstein here.
And I'm Rebo Hustle.
And we will be steering this ship today. Full barn, full crew in the house today. Really excited to start this content here. We're going to be starting our fantasy football content here on the channel. We're going to go through each position, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and then we'll keep it going throughout the offseason, talking about sleepers and overrated, which you'll see today. So really excited to get our fantasy football working. Before we get started, of course, got to shout out the social medias and pay the bills. Make sure to follow us on X at @off_the_dome_pod. Like, comment, subscribe here on YouTube. And as always, follow at Be in the Know, KNEAUX, the only way to spell it. You see it there in the bottom left-hand corner, The Know, the network we work with. Putting out some of the best Louisiana sports content you'll find anywhere. And it's not only Louisiana sports content, it's national stuff too. And it ranges anywhere from football, basketball, baseball, even wrestling, like I'm supporting today with my Austin 316 shirt. So if you like sports, you'll love The Know and you'll love Off the Dome. So make sure to follow us everywhere you can. Without further ado, let's get into it. Top 10 fantasy football quarterbacks. This is our first episode of our fantasy countdown. I think number one comes as no surprise. Josh Allen.
Consistent pick. I mean, He showed that he can do it on the ground. It's not necessarily what receivers he has. Even with Stephon Diggs falling off later in the year, he proved that he can still be one of the top fantasy quarterbacks.
Yeah, and we'll see what they added Keon Coleman through the draft. I was very anti-Keon Coleman on a couple of the episodes here, some mock drafts we had going on. But, if he can translate his contested catch skill set to the NFL, that fits Josh Allen just perfect. So he's got his wide receiver one, and obviously, like Reese mentioned, the rushing upside is through the roof. It's Josh Allen. No questions here.
Yeah, I mean, he had 15 rushing touchdowns last season, and 15 rushing touchdowns in fantasy, especially as a quarterback, is going to get you so many more points than your counterpart. So it's really important for a guy like Josh Allen to get those rushing touchdowns, but he also gets the passing touchdowns and the passing yards. The only real downside you have with Josh Allen this year is, can he keep from turning the ball over, because you think he's going to be forcing the ball a lot more with that young wide receiver core? And does that young wide receiver core step up into where people like Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs have been? But with that being said, it's really hard to move him any lower than one, considering what we've seen out of him in the past 3 seasons.
Well, our number 2 ranked quarterback is Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia Eagles. Another guy that has proven that he can move the ball on the ground, and he has 2 of the best fantasy wide receivers in the game. So hard to deny.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my only question with Jalen Hurts is, does Saquon take away any of the rushing upside that you obviously get with Jalen Hurts? I mean, 15 rushing touchdowns, duplicated what Josh Allen did last year. But I think if you look at Saquon Barkley versus James Cook, Saquon Barkley is a bigger threat to Jalen Hurts than James Cook is to Josh Allen on the ground. So I wonder if those goal line carries, a little tush-push action, is that as effective without Jason Kelce? So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, he's still number 2 for a reason. He's an incredible fantasy football asset, and need to have him on a team.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, without Jason Kelce, with the changing of the guard at running back, bringing in a top 10 running back, not only in fantasy but in NFL talent, into that backfield, that's going to change some things for that Eagles offense. And you also have to think about Kellen Moore. He's taken over as the OC in Philadelphia. So what are we going to see from that offense as opposed to what we've seen from like Brian Johnson last year or Shane Steichen the year before? So, 3rd year in a row that the Eagles have changed OCs. We'll see what that offense looks like on the NFL football field. But I think no matter what, you can't put Jalen Hurts outside of your top 3 fantasy quarterbacks because of what he offers on the ground. He's tough. He's going to play every game. And he has 2 of the top 24 wide receivers in fantasy football. So, I mean, it's impossible to overlook him, and I think it's a pretty safe bet to put him at number 2. Lionel, why don't you introduce us to our number 3 fantasy quarterback?
I love me some Lamar Jackson, baby. He won MVP for a reason last year. It's just so exciting to watch him play. And then you add him to a fantasy team, and you might as well secure yourself a championship. I mean, I think Zay Flowers is going to take a huge step up this year. So you've got your wide receiver 1. You're rocking with Mark Andrews, who is
Healthy.
technically wide receiver 1 because, he's going to get all the targets. But
Mm-hmm.
so then I guess Zay Flowers at wide receiver 2. Can't really complain with that. Plus, they got Tez Walker through the draft, who I was a huge fan of going into the draft. I think this Baltimore offense, again, it's kind of the same deal with Jalen Hurts, though. How much does Derrick Henry take away from Lamar's running?
Yeah.
It's still Lamar Jackson, though. So
You see, I view those differently, though, because Lamar was kind of like a playmaker runner, whereas Jalen Hurts was I need 3 yards, let me just run the ball up the middle. And Lamar is kind of just running as the play goes on. But I think the biggest thing for Lamar this year is the fact that Mark Andrews is likely to have a healthy season. And whenever Mark Andrews does have healthy seasons, Lamar and Mark Andrews are undeniable.
Yeah, Mark Andrews is one of the better tight ends in the league, and we haven't seen him be fully healthy in a minute. But when he is, he's a difference maker, without a doubt. Lamar, like you said, won the MVP for a reason. He won many people fantasy championships last season with what he does on the ground, and that's what you'll see from these top 3 quarterbacks is you can really put them in any order because they're all going to make it work on the ground, and they're all going to score touchdowns. So it really comes down to who throws more yards and who's more consistent. So it's kind of a pick your poison with the top 3. This is just the way we had it going. Here at number 4, I would argue that this is our first real tier break here. Behind those top 3, but number 4, Super Bowl MVP many a time, Super Bowl champion, viewed as already one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever grace the field, Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, his weapons every single season are a question mark, and every year he makes it work anyway, winning a Super Bowl in back-to-back years. So you can never put too much doubt on Patrick Mahomes. This year, Rashee Rice is a question mark. Because we don't know about the suspension. We don't know how many games he'll miss. If he'll miss a whole season, we're not sure yet. But they did add Hollywood Brown. They did add Xavier Worthy. So 2 huge speedsters on the outside that can really take the top off the defense and give Patrick Mahomes a shot at some really big plays.
don't forget they also re-signed McCole Hardman to really scare the defenses,
Yep. They got 3 McCole Hardmans now.
I was going to say, all 3 of those can take the top of a defense, and we know that McCole Hardman, maybe like 3 years ago, has been fantasy viable just because Patrick Mahomes can air it out.
Yep.
And I think that's his biggest asset is definitely the throwing game, but Mahomes isn't scared to run, and so he has a little more upside than the guys below him just because whenever it opens up, he's not afraid to take it. With our 5th quarterback, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. Honestly, this is kind of just a play of I think CeeDee Lamb is going to have a great year again. And they don't have a running game. So therefore, Dak Prescott has to be good or the Cowboys will not make the playoffs.
Do you not have faith in Rico Dowdle?
I do not. I'm positive that
And
Zeke is winning
the
out
ghost of
that
Zeke.
job.
Yeah, Dak had a top 4 quarterback season last year, and I don't think anything has changed. I don't think they changed OCs. Much of the personnel is still the same. Tony Pollard's really the only loss there. But he still has CeeDee Lamb. He still has Brandon Cooks. He has another year of Jake Ferguson. That O-line is pretty much the same, if not even better. So, I think Dak can easily replicate what he did last season with CD. And although we'll talk about wide receivers in a later episode, I mean, like you said, CD's probably going to have another great year, so that automatically rockets Dak up the board.
Yeah, so then moving to number 6 with Jordan Love. Yeah, I'm really excited for what I think Jordan Love can do this year. An elite group of young receivers with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, and then you add Josh Jacobs, who was not the most effective runner last year. He was wildly inefficient with the opportunities he got. But maybe that's just a Raiders thing. Maybe he changes it up there in Green Bay and adds a little bonus to the Packers offense.
Yeah, I think the upside of Love is definitely the touchdowns. And I think that's why I personally have him ranked as high as 6, is just because that Packers offense is going to score.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a question of if, it's when they score. And so whether it be Josh Jacobs scoring touchdowns on the ground or Jordan Love throwing to these 4 awesome wide receivers that you kind of can't have on your fantasy team because they take turns kind of. But Jordan Love is always going to be that one constant.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to say Jordan Love is this high after last year was his first year starting. We had no idea what to expect coming off the Aaron Rodgers era in Green Bay, and now Jordan Love's all the way in our top 6 fantasy quarterbacks. But I think he deserves to be there after what he showed last season, the weapons he has on that offense, and the consistency that you've seen from him in the past year.
Yeah, in best ball, this dude might be like, maybe we're talking top 3.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to boom some weeks. If Christian Watson can hold his hamstring together and Jaden Reed can replicate what he did last year, Romeo Doubs is one of the better wide receiver 3s in the league if you break it down like that. And then they still have Dontavian Wicks in that room, Josh Jacobs to take the pressure off of him. And honestly, I think Josh Jacobs is actually a help for Jordan Love because, teams are going to stack the box more against a more powerful runner like Josh Jacobs as they would against a guy like Aaron Jones, who wasn't really a between-the-tackles type guy. So maybe that'll open up the middle of the field for Jordan Love to attack the defense and get some more points.
One improvement of Josh Jacobs' game from last year that he hasn't shown before is the fact that he can catch the dump-off passes that he wouldn't have before. And so he was kind of getting subbed out for like a Zamir White or anybody else. But last year he was catching a lot of 1 and 2 yard passes just because that's what was open, and I think that will help Jordan Love a lot.
Yeah. Number 7, my favorite player in the entire NFL.
This is your guy.
He is my guy. I have been high on C.J. Stroud since his last year at Ohio State, and when he went number 2 in the draft to the Texans, boy, oh boy, was I excited. And now I'm even more excited because not only is he in a good situation with a good head coach on a playoff team, he adds Stephon Diggs. He gets an extension on Nico Collins. He has one of the best young receivers in Tank Dell and gets Joe Mixon in the backfield, who is a guarantee to catch 45 passes every season. So when you have the opportunity to spread the ball around like that in a good organization where you've got great wide receivers to throw to, the opportunities are endless for C.J. Stroud to succeed, especially after coming off of one of the best rookie quarterback seasons we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more you can really say about C.J. Stroud. I mean, he showed what he can do last year. My concern is with the rest of the offense. Like, Stroud's going to have an incredible season, I think. But when it gets to the receivers, right, it's going to have to be like a pick your poison kind of thing if you're playing with those receivers. Like, is this a Stephon Diggs game? Is this a Nico Collins game? Tank Dell's going to get his. So you got to decide, and it makes it a scary game. I think, and we might get on this on the receiver episode, but I think Diggs might be the guy out in that conversation.
Yeah, with Stroud, I don't mean to beat the dead horse, but Houston said we're going to win now, and so they just added more weapons. And so if he had a great year last year, why can't he do it again with more weapons and a better offensive line?
Yeah, and I think he will. And, Stroud at number 7's lower than some people have him. I've seen Stroud as high as number 5, but I've also seen him as low as like 9 or 10. So I think 7's a good spot for him. Rebo Hustle, take us away, number 8.
Yeah, our biggest mover of the day. Joe Burrow, we previously had him at 6. And he kind of fell just because of the unsurety of who's wide receiver 3 and how long does T. Higgins hold out for a contract. From what we can tell, his hand is 100%, thumb, whichever one it is. Yeah, he's going to be Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase is going to be Jamar Chase. They're going to get yards. They're going to get touchdowns. He's kind of a guy that he's only getting hurt by the people that aren't in the room.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Bengals receivers. I really like Jermaine Burton a lot. I think he's going to secure that wide receiver 3 spot, and it's really going to bolster that Bengals receiver room. And we'll see what happens with T. Higgins, but I think all bets are on. He's playing this year, so you'll have your full array of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and maybe Jermaine Burton pops off a few games this year.
Yeah, I mean, you see Joe Burrow behind us. You know we love the guy. There's nothing personal against Joe Burrow at all. It's just when you look at the upside of a guy like Jordan Love or C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love, you know, is going to get 32 to 35 touchdowns, which is going to really bring him up. C.J. Stroud, I think, has a better complete wide receiver room. While none of the wide receivers are as good as Jamar Chase, I think I would take Tank Dell over Jermaine Burton as your wide receiver 3. So it's just the depth and the weapons in Houston, I think, kind of gives him that edge over Joe in Cincinnati. But we know what Joey B can do. Joe Burrow could finish as quarterback 3, and we wouldn't be that surprised just because of the talent that he has. And if Jamar and T, both come back with their new contracts and ball out. And number 9, it's basically a my guy for the guy sitting in between Rebo and I. So we'll let him talk about Anthony Richardson.
I waned on and on about my love for Lamar Jackson. It is duplicated for Mr. Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is going to, as long as he is healthy, that is the only question mark that I have remaining for Anthony Richardson. Because when he was on the field last year, he answered all the rest. He can throw it with the best of them. And he's got Michael Pittman as his wide receiver 1, which is about as solid as you can be. And then you add A.D. Mitchell in the draft, who I was a huge fan of. I think this Colts offense is really deep at receiver, and that's going to help Anthony Richardson. Oh, and they have a top-tier running back in Jonathan Taylor. This Colts offense is going to be real nice this season.
Yeah, and Jonathan Taylor can catch passes too. So when you have a option-style quarterback who can run the ball and stretch it vertically because he has one of the strongest arms in the NFL, to deep threats like A.D. Mitchell and Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce is still there, a guy like Josh Downs who can take it underneath if Anthony Richardson needs to dump it off, and then JT, who, similar, like I said, for Joe Mixon, probably going to catch 45 to 50 passes every season. So, yeah, like you said, Anthony Richardson has all the upside in the world. The question is his shoulder going to be ready for the season, and how long is it going to take for him to get back to full form?
Yeah, my thing with Anthony Richardson is the 8 guys in front of him, we've seen them do it before. And I kind of, especially if money's involved, I don't want to gamble my season on can he actually do it for 17 games. We know he could do it for 4 or 5. And also question marks at the offensive line. I know they have the best offensive lineman in the game, but the other 4 positions are kind of questionable. And that's how he got hurt last year. And so I think that's why I have him as low as 9, but 9's still a starting quarterback in almost every league.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Anthony Richardson showed early in the season that he can hang in there with C.J. Stroud. They had almost similar starts to the season. And like you said, it's can he hang in there for the whole stretch. But honestly, I just have him on my dynasty team, so I'm trying to speak it into existence.
That sounds about right. And then wrapping up our top 10, Kyler Murray, Arizona Cardinals. He's a guy I've been a little bit higher on than I think other people just because I see the path. I mean, he's a rushing quarterback just like 5 other guys on this list. I mean, if you're talking about rushing quarterbacks, Kyler Murray is just as good as Anthony Richardson. I wouldn't put him necessarily on the Lamar Jackson level because that's a whole different beast. But Kyler's a really good running quarterback, but he also has the arm to match up with other guys in the league, kind of like you mentioned with Anthony Richardson. Kyler Murray has a strong arm, and when he's healthy, he has shown he has the potential to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback, and I think he can do that this season. If he plays all 17 games, kind of like the conversation we just had with AR, if he can play all the games, he has Marvin Harrison Jr., James Conner is a pretty decent receiving back out of the backfield. They add Trey Benson from Florida State, who I think could be a nice little safety valve for Kyler as well, if they get him involved. And I just like Kyler this season. If he's healthy, he adds that rushing upside that always propels quarterbacks forward in fantasy football. And I'll be excited to see what the Cardinals do.
Yeah, I only wish for Kyler's sake that the Cardinals had added more receivers. Because I think is wide receiver 2 Michael Wilson.
I believe they may have added Zay Jones as well, who, not some huge name receiver, but Zay Jones has been a contributor on every single team he's been on.
That's
Whether
fair,
it was
yeah.
the Raiders, the Bills, the Jags, he's always been a low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3 on that squad. So it's not like they added some super talent like you wish they would have. But I think it's enough.
Maybe they did add a super talent in Marvin Harrison. I mean, that's what everyone touts him as. And understandably, we just, we have not seen it on the NFL field yet. I'm expecting that we will because he's checked every box possible. It just would be nice to have another guy there. But Kyler will make up for any lackings in the receiver room with his legs.
Yeah, we know Kyler's talent's there. We kind of have him this low because he's coming off an injury, and that it's only Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride that are going to be fantasy producing targets for him. So other than that, I mean, Kyler Murray has shown in the past that he can be a top 10 quarterback in fantasy football, and if he's healthy for a whole year, why wouldn't he do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. So that wraps up our top 10, but don't go anywhere because we still have a fun little segment to do here where we're each going to give an overrated quarterback and a sleeper quarterback this season. I'll go ahead and start us off. We'll start with the sleeper subject here, and for me, my sleeper quarterback is a guy who's very similar to 9 and 10, but he's not here on our top 10 list, and that is LSU product Jaden Daniels. The reason I put him that high is because he has the rushing upside of anybody else on this list. If you watched Jaden Daniels in his Heisman campaign, a lot of people were comparing him to Lamar Jackson simply for what he can do running the ball. I mean, just go back and watch the 2023 Florida game, and you'll see what I mean. If he can translate that to the NFL, that is all you could want out of a fantasy quarterback. But not only that, I think Terry McLaurin's a very good wide receiver who gets overlooked a lot. He has young weapons in Jahan Dotson as well. And then, he adds a pass-catching running back in Austin Eckler. While I don't think Austin Eckler is going to be a top 10 running back like he used to be in the past, he's going to be a great safety valve for a rookie quarterback. So if I'm talking about a guy who I think could find his way maybe into the top 10 or even top 12 as a quarterback, a guy you can take a shot on in the later rounds to be your backup and then play him on his big weeks, I'm going LSU product Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, there's no denying Jaden Daniels. But my guy, my sleeper pick, is Matthew Stafford. To start the year last year, even without Cooper Kupp, his numbers, yards-wise, was, if not better than Dak's, right on par with Dak's. Talking about the law of averages, touchdowns should, in turn, match the yards thrown. And with a full year of Cooper Kupp 100% healthy, he came out and said that he was not 100% healthy at the end of last year. I think that it should be a very big year for Matt Stafford. I don't know if he's necessarily worthy of being drafted as a starting quarterback, but he's definitely worthy of taking a shot on as backup.
I like it.
No, yeah, I like Stafford in the later rounds. I mean, you don't want to go onesie too early unless you get one of those top 3 guys. I think you can kind of
see how
the value. See how the value plays out.
Yeah,
but,
just see how other people are drafting.
Yeah.
And that's what matters a lot that we can't overstate enough is that we may have them ranked this way, but it depends how other people are drafting. It depends how your roster's built. Because you may want low volatility. You may want high volatility. You may want a stack if you have, if you have the second pick and you get CeeDee Lamb and Dak's there in the 6th, you might want to pick him up while he's there. Just because, there are so many factors into fantasy football.
Yeah, and I do really like the Rams' offense this year. I think Cooper Kupp is still gonna do what he needs to do, but then they've got that young guy Puka Nacua that is my favorite person on the planet. But my favorite quarterback to talk about right now is someone who's been absolutely just dragged through the mud, absolutely just torn to shreds. His name has been obliterated.
Lots of words.
I have a word of the day calendar back there.
Nice.
Justin Herbert.
Okay.
Ooh.
Everyone is talking about how with Coach Harbaugh and Greg Roman coming in, how it's going to be run, 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 and then run some more, and then maybe Justin Herbert will throw 4 passes in a game. It's kind of the same discussion that was had with Dallas recently, where we're going to run the ball every play, but can you really run the ball every play? If in LA's case, you're relying on Gus Edwards and the one leg of J.K. Dobbins, can you really do that? And then you could also look at the receivers. Can you really pass the ball? That's a question also. But I think to win games this season, the Chargers are going to have to rely on their absolute stud of a quarterback in Justin Herbert. He's going to find a way to make it work with Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey. He'll make it work.
Yeah, I mean, if you took fantasy football off the top of our graphic and just put top 10 quarterbacks, no doubt Justin Herbert would be on this list. You can't deny his talent based on what he's shown in the NFL so far. It's just the weapons that are the question mark, as well as Greg Roman, because, you know, when Greg Roman was the OC in Baltimore, people put a lot of doubt on Lamar Jackson, and he was kind of up and down because of the skill set. But Justin Herbert's a very different quarterback than Lamar is, so we'll see how Justin can translate into the LA offense, but I like that he's a sleeper on your list. For me, we're going to go into our overrated now, and my overrated guy is sitting at number 4 on our list. If it was up to me, he'd be a little bit lower. I know I said earlier it's hard to doubt Patrick Mahomes, but what we saw last season, I think he ended up as quarterback 8, quarterback 9. And I think a lot of that has to do with the weapons. And now, I mean, of course he has Travis Kelce. There's no denying he has Travis Kelce, but Travis Kelce's a year older. Rashee Rice may not play half the season. I'm not a big fan of Hollywood Brown. And although Xavier Worthy ran a 4.21, he could be John Ross and never, ever do anything on the NFL level. So for me, I just have a big question mark on Patrick Mahomes for fantasy. I have no doubt that the Chiefs will be a great NFL team, and they'll probably get the 1 or the 2 seed in the AFC and make the AFC Championship again. But for fantasy reasons, I think Patrick Mahomes is going a little bit too high. I would not invest in him as high as his ADP has him right now.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to spend up for Patrick Mahomes like I would be for those top 3 quarterbacks that we've got there. But at the end of the day, it is like Patrick Mahomes is going to get his. Like,
yeah, name value, it's very tough to look at Patrick Mahomes and be like, yeah, I'm going to take Jordan Love over Patrick Mahomes.
You know, it's the Tom Brady effect. Like, can you really discount Tom Brady? Can you discount Patrick Mahomes? Like, just when you count them out, there comes a 40-point week.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And speaking of those top 3 guys, I have a problem with one of them.
I have a feeling I know
my
which one it
goodness.
is.
Speak your words.
And it is Mr. Jalen Hurts.
I knew it.
That's fair.
So, in an interview this week, he came out and said, well, our offense is 95% new. Also, with the addition of Saquon Barkley, what scares me is a lot of his rushing yards were designed QB runs. They weren't the playmaking of Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. They were designed QB runs. You add Saquon Barkley, why do you need a QB run? I don't have a problem with the offensive line. I still think that those 5 guys will get it done. I just find him to probably in this new offense, he will have more of a passer role than he has in the past.
Yeah, fair. I mean, can't argue with that.
The rushing touchdowns are what made him a top 2 quarterback last year, and I
Right.
think those will be taken away.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the 15 touchdowns that'll do it to you. But I mean, wildly pretty inefficient last year when it came to passing. So those numbers definitely have to take an uptick to maintain extreme relevance. Close it out with the last overrated guy here, and he's not on our top 10 list, but was mentioned in the podcast so far. The LSU product, Mr. Jaden Daniels.
Okay.
Look, so last year I think really spoiled us when it comes to rookie quarterbacks with the just emergence of C.J. Stroud and the flashes from Anthony Richardson. That doesn't always happen. And last year you can look back to it also with Bryce Young. Had a rough season. Now Bryce Young's team last year was not the most spectacular. They didn't really help him a whole lot. The ghost of Adam Thielen is not going to really win you games. But with Jaden Daniels, everyone, talks about the rushing upside, rightfully so. I mean, our top 3 guys are all primarily because of the rushing upside. But I think he's going to have a hard time relying solely on that to secure fantasy relevance this season. He's going to have to throw the ball. And I do like Terry McLaurin. I just wonder if he's the tier of receiver that would be needed to really break out for Jaden Daniels. And then Jahan Dotson is someone that I've kind of lost a lot of faith in. He hasn't shown much in his young career so far. He's got time. Maybe he can break out. Maybe he just needed a superstar potential quarterback in Jaden Daniels. But I also worry about the health with Jaden Daniels because, oh my goodness, did he take hits?
Oh yeah,
at LSU. Yeah. I mean, he's gonna have to figure that out at the next level. If he can't figure out how to protect himself, it might be a really short career that we talk about for Mr. Jaden Daniels.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Lionel Frankenstein, what I have to tell you is, even though this is your second full podcast on this show, we do not disparage the name of JD5.
We did plenty of that, and by we, I mean Rebo himself did plenty of that before last LSU football season, and he had to eat his shorts.
Oh, I ate them.
Because of what he did wrong, and yet JD5 won a Heisman. So I do.
So
agree
you welcome
that
the hate.
No,
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm not hating. It's caution. It's caution.
Yeah.
Right?
Proceed with caution, of course.
We've seen what Jaden Daniels can do. The question is, can he do it at the next level? Also, allow me to just throw my air quotes hatred in as a learning experience. We shall see what happens by mid-season if we're rolling a pod and I'm like, well,
Terry
I take
McLaurin
back
is the number
everything
one
I've said.
receiver in
Terry
fantasy
McLaurin
football.
is breaking
Yeah.
records and stuff.
See, the way I think about it right now, as I'm looking at our board, is if Anthony Richardson and Jaden Daniels were in the same class, Jaden Daniels still would have been drafted above him.
Yes.
And if we can put Anthony Richardson in our top 9 in year 2 after he only played 5 games, why can't Jaden find his way the same way? So, that's kind of how I want to think about it, is just, rushing to me matters a lot in fantasy football. And so does upside. And I think Jaden Daniels has one of the highest upsides you'll see from a young quarterback. And even without the rushing, C.J. Stroud, he's at number 7, and he doesn't really run the ball. I think the Bryce Young comparison, I get it because he was the number 1 overall pick, and you put a lot of faith into that. But the team around JD5 is so much better than the team that Bryce Young had last year.
And it wasn't a direct comparison of Jaden. I think Jaden Daniels is a much better player than Bryce Young.
Oh yeah,
it was more just a comparison of rookie quarterbacks.
Yep.
The outliers of C.J. Stroud and Justin Herbert, his amazing rookie season, that doesn't happen.
Right.
Except for when it does.
And I think, so I just looked it up. Right now, Jaden Daniels is going at QB 16. How do you fall upon that? Do you think 16 is too high?
See, I thought he was much higher than that. Some of the rankings I saw had him closer to the top 10.
No, I just looked on based on ADP. He's going at QB 16 right now.
I mean, at QB 16, I'd be willing to take a shot. I mean,
yeah, I think context matters because and that's the thing with fantasy football too, is you can look at 20 different rankings and they'll have 20 different ways that they rank guys. So I think it just depends on which platforms you use and who's drafting against you, because Rebo and I are going to be a part of a draft in 2 months where we'll probably see Kamara go in the first round. We'll probably see a defense go in round 3. So, it really depends who else is on the board and who's there with you. So everything in context and we'll see how fantasy football drags us this season. Our next episode is going to be running backs. So excited for that because running backs are very controversial because you have your number 1 guy, and I'm sure we'll all have the same guy at number 1, and then 2 through 10 may be completely different for us.
You don't know who my number 1 is.
Okay,
Don't
this guy.
Don't speak on that.
But I think running backs are going to be a fun episode just because I think it's going to have a little bit more parity than the quarterback episode did, and we'll be able to have a little bit more discussion based on our own feelings. If you like this content, make sure to like, comment, subscribe here on YouTube. We really appreciate anything you do. Commenting on it helps it bring it to the top. Subscribing helps bring our numbers up too, and would be glad for you to join the Off the Dome crew. So if you like this, make sure to do that. Make sure to follow us on X at @off_the_dome pod, and as always, follow the No Network. Great content coming out of there. You can check out the website. You can check out the social media. You can check out the YouTube channel. We're doing interviews. We're writing articles. Just super fun stuff going on at the No Network, and I'm glad to be a part of it, and I know these boys are too. So until next week, when we do our top 10 fantasy football running backs, I am Redfish.
I'm Lionel Frankenstein.
And I'm Reba Hustle.
And we'll see you next time.